Is exactly 9:19 and it is Heritage Month. So I reckon that it is not a moment too soon that the Trilingual Dictionary of CARPS has been launched by a collective of academic and community stakeholders. To talk to us about this wonderful initiative is Quentin Williams. He's the director of the CMDR and an Associate Professor of Sociolinguistics in the Linguistics Department at UWC. Quentin, morning. Welcome to the program.
Morning, Julie. Thank you for having me on the program. I'm delighted to be with you.
Thank you. And I'm absolutely fascinated. Like I said, not a moment too soon.
Right.
This, as we are told, has been in existence, this language,
Right.
since the 1500s.
Right.
But the CARPS language or Afrikaans, depending how you're going to refer to it, is
Yes.
synonymous with Cape Town in South Africa. And sadly, we've never had a dictionary up to now. How did
Yeah.
this all come about?
Yeah. So this is it's very important that you point out that it is a language and not a dialect, because a dialect is seems to suggest that it's a variety of a language. And when you talk about empowerment issues of speakers today, when you refer to a dialect, all talk about empowerment stops. But if it's a language, you know that this is a system of signs. It is governed by rules and it's used by a community of speakers. Now, it's been in existence since the 1500s because of the koi that was found at the beaches of Cape Town and in the mountain, Table Mountain. They were the first ones to meet travelers, sea travelers from Europe, such as the Portuguese, going around the Cape, then known as Cape de Boa Esperança, the Cape of Good Hope. Now, in contact with the Portuguese, for example, with Bartolomé Diaz, the Khoi exchanged small words, but often led to misunderstanding. And when that misunderstanding occurred, they would use, they would go fetch their kiris. So even then already, the word kiri that we still, or sambok, that we still use today, was around in the 1500s. It is when the Dutch started traveling around the Cape towards Batavia, that is Indonesia, or Jakarta today, Indonesia, and brought in slaves back to Europe because they went around the Cape to go fetch spices and other types of goods that was used in Europe. The year we see in the late 1500s an intense development of carbs, or what would later then become carbs. A lot of the words that we use in Afrikaans or in carbs today, words such as tea, words such as kopi, words such as baiki, and words such as subat are all words that traveled all the way from Batavia to the Cape. So this language, Carbs we know today, or Afrikaans, which refers to the same language, was influenced not only by the Malay Muslims coming from Batavia, or Malay speakers, but also speakers from throughout Africa, from Madagascar, and also India.
Interestingly, you talk about the Muslims
Yeah,
from the East, but it's also very important to acknowledge the agency of people from the global South in developing CARPS or
right.
Afrikaans. For
Yeah.
example, the language was first taught in madrasas,
Hmm.
which is Islamic schools, obviously, and was written in the Arabic script. Um,
Absolutely.
and this acknowledgement is imperative, especially because Afrikaner nationalists appropriated CARPS in the later years. And how did that, to what degree did that all change?
Absolutely. I think the Afrikaners, especially the Genootskap van Rechter Afrikaners, had it in their mind that these enslaved people that the Dutch, our Dutch forebears brought to the Cape, there is no way we will allow them to have access to this standard variety that we will call Afrikaans. Now, before Afrikaans was standardized or even named or formed, we had Kitab Hollands or Kaap's Hollands. Now, Kitab Hollands is the script, the Arabic script that first set down phonetically Afrikaans. And that's a very important acknowledgement that we have to point out. Uh, um, travelers like Effendi, Abu Bakr Effendi, who wrote the very small words, tried to set down the tonality of Afrikaans in Arabic script, made a huge impact in the madrasas that still stands in Buitenkrag Street in Cape Town. Now, that's what we need to acknowledge. But in the process of standardizing, for example, Afrikaans into a language of power, into a language that got its first dictionary, and in the establishment of an academy that sustained the standardization of Afrikaans throughout apartheid and today, both Kitab Holland speakers, those who wrote in the Arabic scripts of Afrikaans, and the enslaved that was freed later, who spoke Kaaps Hollands, and also the Khoikhoi, who were the original first contact speakers that started to use an early form of Afrikaans. They all lost out in the standardization process. Today, what we are doing with this dictionary, and that we can't get away from, is the first real step towards the empowerment of the speakers of Afrikaans and Kaaps. But we are doing so by showing or shining a better light on the history of Kaaps, and we really need to do that, because it comes about, this language, through a confluence of language contact and language spread situations. And our history often is told that it starts at 1652. That is completely wrong. We know before that the enslaved Muslims, the Malay speakers, and the speakers from India, they all influenced what became an early form of Kaaps and Afrikaans, Kaaps and Afrikaans, and indeed Afrikaans.
Okay, now we understand that today Kaaps is most commonly used by the largely working class speakers on the Cape Flats,
Right.
where many disenfranchised people were forcibly moved by the apartheid government. But it is used across, in many contexts of socialization,
Right.
learning, commerce, politics, religion. How different, if we're talking working class people owning this language, how different is it to the Afrikaans, which is understood and spoken today, that we inherited by our apartheid rulers?
Absolutely. It's very important to understand that language is not outside ourselves. We are language. Wherever we go, we take language with it, we shape it, we give it, we transform its syntactic structure, its lexical flavor, and we can't get away from it because it's a natural thing. If you watch the movie Barakat, for example,
I
it's
haven't
true.
yet.
Yes, but you should. I mean, even just the trailer, but the trailer tells you, and that it's mixed with Kaaps and Muslim Afrikaans, and it celebrates this rich language. Now, a few decades ago, you could have said that Kaaps and Afrikaans is specifically used by speakers on the Cape Flats, and it's just by them. But as we have progressed in the New South Africa, we know that it's not only used by Cape colored speakers, but it's used by white and black speakers. Many of them are working class, unfortunately. But what we often misunderstand is that many of the colored speakers who speak Kaaps and Afrikaans have sort of grown to a different class, have moved out of the Cape Flats working class circumstances, have moved across South Africa and beyond. Many are found in, for example, Australia, New Zealand, or in the Middle East. And so what we need to understand that the language has spread across the world. What is more important here is that we are misunderstanding not only how different Kaaps and Afrikaans is from other Afrikaans speakers, but also how Kaap speakers are socialized into Kaaps and Afrikaans. The first three languages that Kaap speakers on the Cape Flats especially get to hear is a variety of the English, um, Kaaps and Afrikaans, of course, and then the language of the number gangs, that is Sabella. So when they are socialized into those three languages, when they go to school, they have to unlearn those and learn standard Afrikaans, which to many sounds like a foreign language. So what we as society are misunderstanding is the rich bilingualism and multilingualism of these speakers. And because of the influence of Sabella and their type of English, Kaap speakers, Afrikaans speakers are actually very multilingual than, let's say, as a speaker in Oranje, an Afrikaans speaker in Oranje or in the Northwest province. They differ in accent, of course. We all have an accent, but we need to really understand that in that particular description, that's how Kaaps and Afrikaans speakers are different. The other additional problem also is that in the academy linguists and social linguists have, for the better part of colonialism and apartheid, sustained a particular idea of the speaker, the Kaaps and Afrikaans speaker, including the Kitab Muslim Afrikaans speaker, as not speaking pure Afrikaans. Now, let me be clear, there's no such thing as pure Afrikaans. But because of that misunderstanding, or because of that imposition, Kaaps and Afrikaans speakers, including Muslim Afrikaans speakers, are always seen as speaking a lower form of Afrikaans, and are less so in the hierarchy of languages.
So basically what you're saying is that people who speak Afrikaans are viewed as being possibly less educated, less distinguished, less polished, so to speak,
Yes.
and it's relegated to the working class, so to speak. You
Right.
wanting to change that narrative, obviously in conjunction with all your partners. And I also understand Sami Alli is the founding director of the Center for Race, Ethnicity and Language at Stratford University. What's his interest in all of this? And because of time constraints, I'm just going to rush in a few more questions. I understand that the dictionary is still in launch phase. When is it being launched? Why should I get this dictionary? How is it going to serve me? So there you go. Could you respond to all of those questions?
So very quickly, Professor H. Samuel Alim at University of California, Los Angeles, has been a long-time supporter of and in sort of advancing the research and understanding on Kaaps and Afrikaans. And he supports us via his center, also, of course, financially, and that boosts us in terms of what we can do. So having that particular link is very important to us. Why should you get this dictionary and how long will it take? Okay, so I will always say conservatively, let's say 3 years, but we will have something available next year. The whole plan is to change the narrative around talking about Muslim Afrikaans, Kaaps, and Afrikaans, because those are not dialects, those are languages. And the reason why we say languages is because we need to change those languages into languages of teaching and learning in our schools so that we can teach our children abstract and decontextualized knowledge that is using Kaaps and Afrikaans to teach mathematics, history, and economics and so forth. Now, why should you get this dictionary? One, it will help minimize intercultural and cross-cultural misunderstanding in terms of communication. And two, it will transform lives and actually save lives. A lot of one example is that if, for example, a judge or magistrate needs to understand a particular discourse, meaning how a particular defendant has talked or have been accused to talk and using particular words, the dictionary will help to shed light on the meanings of particular words. And in that way will help save lives, because people might not go to prison because of a simple misunderstanding of the word aware. Because a word aware has so many different senses and meanings, right? Even the word horse, people might understand it as part of the Sabella language, but it's used in Kaaps on a daily basis as well. So misunderstanding regarding that word can be minimized through this dictionary. But our ultimate aim is to shed light on the history of the language and to change the language into a language of teaching and learning.
Quentin, we need an entire day to unpack all of
I
this. It's
agree.
absolutely, absolutely fascinating. I need to get you back on the show sometime soon to talk about accents, how
Yes,
that plays into our lives to advantage or disadvantage us. I think that's a
absolutely.
huge subject on its own. And
Yes,
also how to minimize this issue around, very especially with Afrikaans, where people are going to view it as being not sophisticated enough to use
absolutely.
in everyday discourse. Would you
Yeah.
agree with that?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think I'm happy to come back on the show and then just talk more about that. It's the few of us working for the many, but it will take a village to change all of this transformation that we need. And I think this is the beginning of the end of looking at Afrikaans as an apartheid language, and we're talking about the future as being an inclusive future, and better understand, and also to better understand the languages that we use. Thank you very much.
Quentin Williams, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. You've opened my eyes to
Yes.
something new, something wonderful. And it is Heritage Month, so let us celebrate who we are. Go well, and we'll be in touch again soon. Thank you and
Thank
goodbye.
you. All the best, Julie. Bye.
9:35 exactly. Still to come on the show, Azarvadi, about growing your own food, and rightly so in these days of food scarcity. And to wrap up, we'll be talking with someone by the name of Vanessa Berger about killings in Umlazi. So do stay with us.